Facing a midlife crisis? Find courage in everyday women's stories. Subscribe to Resilient Women Rising.
The Hidden Melody: How a 48-year-old divorced woman found her voice in the symphony of life. Sarah Ellis had long since resigned herself to a life of muted colors. At 48, she lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of a bustling city, a quiet refuge where the echo of past dreams still lingered. Divorced for nearly a decade, Sarah had dedicated herself to raising her daughter, Mia, and maintaining a semblance of order in a world that often felt indifferent. Her days were filled with the steady hum of her job at the local library, the predictable rhythm of school runs, and evenings spent with a book in hand, trying to quiet the persistent ache of loss. Yet beneath the surface of this carefully managed life, a silent melody had begun to stir. Sarah remembered, with bittersweet clarity, the days when she had been a passionate pianist. Back then, her fingers danced across the keys with a grace that expressed every emotion she felt. Music had been her sanctuary, a place where she could pour out her heart, unburdened by the weight of expectations. But after her divorce, as the demands of motherhood and survival took over, that part of her had gradually fallen silent. One rainy autumn evening, while sorting through old boxes in the Attica task she had avoided for years, Sarah discovered an old piano score. Its pages were yellowed with age, and the edges were frayed by time. The music, titled The Hidden Melody, was one of her earliest compositions, written during a time when hope was as abundant as the morning light. As she carefully turned each page, memories flooded back the thrill of a new composition, the freedom of expressing herself without restraint, and the overwhelming joy that music once brought her. The score was unfinished, its final measures blank as if waiting for her return. That night, as the rain drummed against the window pane, Sarah sat before her dusty, upright piano. Tentatively, she pressed a key. The sound was soft and hesitant, yet it resonated deep within her. With trembling fingers, she began to play, hesitating at first, before gradually losing herself in the familiar, healing cadence. In that moment, the weight of years of silence began to lift, replaced by the stirring of something long forgotten, a yearning to reclaim her voice. The discovery of the hidden melody was a turning point. It was as if the universe had sent her a reminder that her passion still lived within her, waiting for the moment to burst forth. However, as Sarah's fingers coaxed tentative notes from the keys, a flood of questions accompanied the music. Could she really find the courage to step back into a world where she once shined? Was it possible to balance the demands of motherhood with the revival of a long-dormant passion? In the quiet solitude of that rainy night, as the last note reverberated softly in the empty room, Sarah made a decision. She would allow herself to explore the music once again, to let the hidden melody guide her toward a future where her voice, both in music and in life, could finally be heard. One chilly November evening, after tucking Mia into bed and finally savoring a rare moment of solitude, Sarah found herself rummaging through a box of old documents in the Attica box that once belonged to her ex-husband, David. As she flipped through faded envelopes and forgotten letters, one particular note caught her eye. It was not written in David's familiar handwriting, but in the clear, confident script of an old friend named Laura. In the letter, Laura wrote that she had recently reconnected with some mutual acquaintances from their college. Days, a time when music and art had filled their lives with passion and promise. Laura urged Sarah to meet her for coffee the following week at the corner cafe on Maple Street. "There are things I need to share, things about David, and about a future you might not have considered," the letter read. "Sometimes the past holds the key to a new beginning. Please meet me." Reading Laura's words stirred something in Sarah. It wasn't a mystical summons, but a very real invitation from someone who had once shared in her dreams. It carried the implication that there were still unresolved truths about her. Ex-husbanda man, she had long considered the cause of her sorrow secrets that might explain his absence from her life in ways she had never imagined. That Friday evening, Sarah dressed in a simple sweater and stepped out into the cool night. With the letter tucked safely in her purse, she made her way to the corner cafe, a cozy, familiar place with brick walls, soft lighting, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Inside, amidst the murmur of quiet conversation, she found Laura waiting at a corner table, her smile warm and knowing. "Sarah, it's so good to see you," Laura greeted as they embraced. Over cups of steaming coffee, Laura began to share snippets of conversations from the past, hints of financial troubles, and whispered disagreements that had been concealed from Sarah. According to Laura, David had been involved in a series of decisions that were far more complicated than the simple narrative of their breakup suggested. There were mentions of professional pressures, strained loyalties, and even a mysterious protection fund that he had set up to ensure that Sarah and Mia would be looked after, even if it meant sacrificing his own happiness. Though these revelations were painful, they also began to paint a picture of a man who had loved Sarah enough to shield her from harsh realities, a man whose silence had been his way of protecting her. Laura's words ignited in Sarah a spark of curiosity and a desire for understanding. Perhaps in uncovering the truth about David's hidden life, she could find the strength to rebuild her own future. As the conversation deepened, Sarah felt the weight of her own unresolved grief lift just a little. The idea that the past might hold not just pain, but also unexpected acts of love, gave her hope, a hope that whispered of second chances and the possibility of reclaiming the melody that had once defined her life. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself drawn into a journey of reflection and discovery. Every spare moment was spent poring over old letters, photographs, and notes that David had left behind, documents that told a story of a life more complex than the one Sarah had known. The letters, dated from the final years of their marriage, were written in a tone that was both tender and haunted by secret sorrow. They spoke of long nights filled with worry, of difficult decisions made in silence, and of an undercurrent of tension that Sarah had never fully understood. One letter in particular stood out. It was addressed simply to "My dearest S," and its contents were both heartfelt and cryptic. David wrote of meetings with a trusted colleague whose identity was never fully revealed, but who had been the linchpin in David's covert efforts to secure a stable future for Sarah and Mia. In his words, there was a clear indication that he had been burdened by the demands of a cutthroat work environment, forced to make choices that conflicted with his personal ideals. His heart ached as he described the agony of these decisions, torn between the love he felt for his family and the ruthless demands of a corporate world that valued profit over compassion. Each time Sarah read the letter, her emotions swirled between anger, sorrow, and an emerging sense of admiration for the man she had once loved. The secret correspondence painted a portrait of David as a man who had not abandoned her out of neglect, but had been caught in the merciless gears of a system that demanded sacrifices no one should ever have to make. Yet, with every revelation came a tidal wave of questions. What exactly had driven him to hide these truths? Why had he chosen silence over transparency? Even as his actions continued to shape their lives in ways Sarah was only beginning to understand, determined to find answers, Sarah reached out to Laura once more. Over long, thoughtful conversations in quiet cafes, Laura encouraged her to confront the past head-on. "Your story doesn't have to be defined by the pain of yesterday," Laura said gently. "Sometimes the most beautiful melodies emerge after the harshest dissonances." Encouraged by Laura's support, Sarah decided it was time to meet with others who had known David in different ways. She arranged meetings with former colleagues, friends, and even distant acquaintances who might offer insight into the man behind the facade. At one such meeting at a family-run diner on the outskirts of town, she encountered Mark, a soft-spoken man who had worked closely with David. Over bowls of hearty soup, Mark shared memories of David's inner conflicts, moments of vulnerability, and the heavy burden of choices made in silence. Though Mark's recollections were fragmented, they lent credence to the idea that David had been living a double life, a reality that Sarah had never dared to imagine. Each encounter added a new layer to her understanding, slowly assembling a mosaic of truths that redefined her past. With every shared story, Sarah felt her heart both break and heal. The hidden sacrifices, the quiet heroism, and the weight of decisions made under duress painted a picture of a man who had loved her enough to bear an unbearable burden. One drizzly afternoon, while returning a stack of old books to the library archives, Sarah's world shifted again. In the hushed corridors of the library, a place that had always been a refuge for her, she stumbled upon a set of archived financial documents. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, she requested access to the records of David's accounts. To her astonishment, she discovered a series of meticulously kept ledgers detailing transactions and entries labeled as protection fund. These records, dating back several years, revealed that David had secretly set aside funds to ensure that Sarah and Mia would never suffer, even if his own career and reputation suffered as a result. As Sarah pored over the documents, tears welled in her eyes. The stark reality of the numbers and the cold precision of the ledgers contrasted sharply with the warm memories of a loving husband. Here was undeniable evidence that, in the midst of corporate chaos and personal sacrifice, David had worked tirelessly to secure a future for his family. It was a testament to a kind of love that was as painful as it was profound, a love that had been hidden behind layers of secrecy and regret. That evening, after a long day at the library, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table and began to write in a journal a practice she had long abandoned. With each word, she poured out her grief, her confusion, and surprisingly, a growing sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, she saw her past not solely as a source of pain, but as a mosaic of moments that had, in their own way, prepared her for the future. The truth was complex, and while it did not erase the pain, it offered a pathway to understanding and, ultimately, healing. Just as Sarah began to piece together the fragments of her past, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text was brief yet carried a weight of urgency. "Your journey has just begun. Meet me at the old marina at midnight." The message sent a shiver down her spine. Who was A? And what more could there be to uncover at the old marina, a place that, though once lively with commerce, now lay quiet and desolate under the pale glow of streetlights? The invitation was far from mystical. It was real and immediate, a challenge to confront yet another layer of her complicated history. That night, under a sky as dark as ink, Sarah drove along the winding coastal road toward the marina. The salty air, the rhythmic crashing of waves against weathered docks, and the distant sound of seagulls set the stage for what felt like a turning point in her life. Every mile brought her closer to both the truth and the danger that might be lurking in the shadows. Arriving at the marina, Sarah found the area shrouded in an eerie silence. The docks, once bustling with activity, now stood empty, illuminated only by the dim light of a few scattered lamps. Parking her car near a row of old boats, she stepped out into the cool night. There, near the end of the pier, stood a solitary figure. Dressed in a dark hooded jacket, the figure was motionless, face hidden in shadow. As Sarah approached with cautious determination, the figure stepped forward into the faint glow of a street lamp. It was a woman with eyes that shimmered with both sorrow and resolve. "I'm Amelia," the woman said quietly. "I was a close friend of David's, a confidant, who shared in his struggles and sacrifices. I've been waiting for you." Amelia's presence was real and grounded, her tone matter-of-fact, yet laced with empathy. She began to explain that David's life had been far more complicated than Sarah had ever imagined. His involvement in a high-stakes corporate environment, the pressures he faced, and the difficult decisions he had made were all part of a larger picture, one that included a protection fund designed to secure Sarah and Mia's future. Amelia produced a small USB drive and a leather-bound journal, items that she claimed were part of David's private records. These documents, Amelia explained, contain the truth about the sacrifices David made. They reveal the lengths he went to in order to protect his family, even if it meant keeping painful secrets from you. As Sarah clutched the USB drive and journal, the reality of David's hidden life pressed in on her. There was no fantastical mystery here, only the raw, unvarnished truth of a man caught between the demands of a ruthless corporate world and his love for his family. But with the truth came the promise of liberation, a chance to rebuild her life with a clearer understanding of the past. Before Amelia could continue, the sound of distant sirens grew louder, and a sense of urgency filled the night air. "They're coming," Amelia whispered. "There are those who will do anything to keep these truths hidden." Without further delay, she urged Sarah to follow her, as they left the marina and vanished into the maze of narrow, deserted streets. In a dilapidated boathouse on the edge of the marina, the atmosphere was tense with anticipation and fear. The wooden structure, weathered by time and the salty breeze, offered a temporary sanctuary from the prying eyes that might be lurking nearby. Inside, amid old nets and scattered tools, Sarah connected the USB drive to a dusty laptop. The screen flickered, and a folder titled David's Truth appeared, a digital chronicle of the sacrifices and struggles that had defined his later years. File by file, the digital confession unfolded encrypted emails, scanned documents, and financial records that traced the origins of the protection fund David had meticulously maintained. One file, labeled Final Memo, detailed a heartfelt message to an unknown recipient identified only by the initial E. In it, David revealed the full extent of his internal battle, a conflict between his desire to shield Sarah and Mia from the brutal realities of his work and the crushing demands of a corporate world that left him no choice but to compromise his integrity. Sarah's heart pounded as she absorbed every detail. The evidence painted a complex portrait of a man who had loved her deeply enough to endure unimaginable hardship. The digital documents, though stark and unyielding in their factual clarity, carried an emotional weight that words alone could not capture. Amid the flood of information, Sarah discovered a handwritten note embedded between the pages of a digital ledger. For Sarah, my love, I have done all I could to protect our future. I know you may never fully understand the choices I was forced to make, but know that every sacrifice was born of a desire to keep you safe. Forgive me and find strength in the truth. The note struck Sarah deeply. Tears blurred her vision, but within that moment of raw vulnerability, she also felt a surge of resolve. The truth, however painful, was now in her hands. It was a key that would unlock the next chapter of her life, allowing her to heal and rebuild on the foundation of understanding rather than regret. Before she could process the enormity of what she had learned, the boathouse door slammed open. Figures in dark clothing burst into the room, their voices harsh and determined. In the ensuing chaos, Sarah clutched the USB drive to her chest and, alongside Amelia, scrambled for the concealed exit behind a stack of old crates. Outside, under the dim light of a waning moon, they raced through deserted streets until they reached a safe, a nondescript building on the edge of the Marina District, where the echoes of danger were momentarily silenced. Inside the safe house, in a small room lit by the soft glow of a single lamp, Sarah and Amelia huddled together as they reviewed the files once more. The documents confirmed what Sarah had long suspected: David had sacrificed his peace, his reputation, and even his personal happiness to create a future for Sarah and Mia, future that had been hidden from her in the name of protection. The revelation was both devastating and, in a strange way, deeply comforting. It was the truth, unvarnished and real truth, that now paved the way for her own healing. In the days that followed, as the immediate threat from those determined to silence the truth began to fade, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. With the evidence of David's sacrifices firmly in her grasp, she resolved to reclaim not only her memories, but also her future. The painful revelations from the past, though harsh and unyielding, began to transform into a source of strength, the foundation upon which she could rebuild her identity. Sarah decided to channel her emotions into her long-forgotten passion, music. With determination, she dusted off her old piano relic that had once been the center of her world and began to play. The notes, initially tentative and shaky, soon flowed into a melody that was both haunting and hopeful. The Hidden Melody, her earliest composition, took on new meaning as she reworked it to reflect the complex tapestry of her life, a blend of sorrow, sacrifice, and the possibility of renewal. Every evening, after Mia was asleep and the world outside grew quiet, Sarah dedicated herself to the piano. The music became a daily ritual, a way to process her grief and to celebrate the small victories that punctuated her journey. With each practice session, her confidence grew, and the piano transformed from a silent instrument into a vibrant testament of her resilience. Encouraged by the support of friends like Laura, Maya, and even the gentle encouragement from Ethana, kind soul she had met during one of her community events, Sarah began to open up about her journey. Invitations to share her story at local gatherings and community centers started pouring in. At these events, she spoke candidly about the sacrifices of the past and the beauty of reclaiming one's voice. Her story resonated with many who had faced similar struggles, and slowly, she began to see herself not as a victim of her history, but as a survivor with a powerful message of hope. Mia, too, played a pivotal role in Sarah's transformation. The young woman, whose eyes still held the wonder of youth, began to show interest in her mother's music. One quiet afternoon, as Sarah played a gentle tune, Mia shyly approached and asked if she could learn a few notes. In that moment, Sarah realized that the legacy of her passion was not solely her own. It could be shared, nurtured, and passed on to the next generation. This new chapter was not without its challenges. There were days when self-doubt crept in, when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm her. But with every note played, every word shared at community meetings, and every smile exchanged with those who believed in her, Sarah found herself growing stronger. The scars of yesterday became stepping stones to a brighter future. The turning point in Sarah's journey came when the local community center announced an initiative to revive a long-abandoned theater in their neighborhood, a historic building that once buzzed with the vibrancy of live performances. The project, led by passionate local artists and community leaders, aimed to create a space where stories of resilience and creativity could be celebrated. Sarah was invited to perform as part of the opening ceremony. At first, the idea terrified her. The thought of standing on a stage, of bearing her soul through music in front of an audience, was daunting. Yet, the encouragement from her mentors and the promise of finally reclaiming her passion outweighed her fears. Determined, Sarah threw herself into preparing for the performance. Late nights at the piano, sessions with a local music coach, and the steadfast support of friends and family transformed her apprehension into a quiet resolve. On the day of the theater's reopening, the auditorium buzzed with anticipation. The historic hall, with its ornate balconies and red velvet seats, was filled with community members eager to witness the rebirth of a cherished cultural landmark. As Sarah took the stage, her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The soft glow of the stage lights and the expectant silence of the audience set the perfect backdrop for her to share her truth. Sitting at the grand piano, Sarah began to play The Hidden Melody. Every note resonated with a collective story of sacrifice, hope, and transformation. The performance was more than just a musical recital, it was a declaration of her journey, a testament to the strength that comes from embracing one's past and forging a new future. As the final chord lingered in the air, the auditorium erupted into applause, a resounding affirmation of her courage and the beauty of her rediscovered passion. In the months following the triumphant performance at the theater, Sarah's life began to blossom in ways she had never imagined. The revival of her music and the public acknowledgement of her journey brought a renewed sense of purpose. The community center, which had once served as a safe haven during her darkest days, evolved into a vibrant hub of creativity and support. Workshops, art exhibitions, and musical evenings became regular events, each one a celebration of resilience and the power of second chances. Sarah's story resonated far and wide. Her memoir, tentatively titled The Hidden Melody, became a beacon for those who had long felt silenced by the weight of their own histories. In local newspapers and on community radio, her voice, both literal and metaphorical, spoke of the struggles and triumphs of reclaiming one's identity. Every interview, every public appearance, further solidified her role as a symbol of hope for others facing similar battles. During this period, Sarah's relationship with Ethan deepened as well. Their bond, nurtured through shared experiences and gentle encouragement, grew into a quiet yet profound romance. In the simplicity of everyday moments, a shared cup of tea in the early morning, long walks along the city park, or conversations that stretched late into the night, Sarah found in Ethan a steady partner who understood the complexities of her journey. Their relationship was real and unhurried, built on mutual respect, compassion, and the recognition that every person's path to healing is unique. Mia, now more confident and curious about her mother's passion, began to participate actively in the creative community. She joined workshops, started learning the piano under Sarah's guidance, and even contributed her own artistic touches to community projects. The bond between mother and daughter grew stronger, each of them supporting the other in their shared quest for a brighter future. As Sarah's journey continued, the ripple effect of her transformation extended beyond her immediate circle. Invitations to speak at regional arts festivals, community centers, and local schools poured in. In each engagement, Sarah shared her story, her struggles, her triumphs, and the quiet power of embracing one's hidden melodies. Her words resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom had faced their own battles with loss and self-doubt. At one regional arts festival, Sarah delivered a keynote address on the power of vulnerability and the importance of reclaiming one's voice. "We all have a melody within us," she said, her voice firm yet gentle, a unique composition born of our joys and sorrows. It is never too late to let that melody guide you to a place of hope, healing, and new beginnings. The audience's response was overwhelming, a standing ovation that affirmed her journey and the beauty of authenticity. Among the many who reached out was Rachel, a young aspiring musician who found solace in Sarah's story. Over several cups of coffee and long conversations, Sarah mentored Rachel, guiding her through the challenges of the creative world and encouraging her to embrace her own unique voice. Their friendship blossomed into a mentor-mentee relationship that was both inspiring and heartwarming, a testament to the idea that sharing one's truth can spark new dreams in others. The years rolled on, and the community that had rallied around Sarah's revival continued to grow. The safe house that once sheltered her during the darkest hours had been transformed into a fully fledged community. Centera, a place where art, music, and shared stories provided solace and hope for many. Sarah's art studio became a beacon of creativity, where each brushstroke, each melody, was a celebration of the resilience of the human spirit. One mild summer evening, as the city bathed in the golden hues of dusk and the silver moon rose gently in the sky, Sarah stood on the balcony of her art studio with Mia at her side and Ethan joining them for a quiet moment of reflection. The neighborhood, once defined by its quiet routine, now buzzed with the energy of a community united by the power of shared experiences. In that serene moment, Sarah looked out over the world with gratitude and hope. The past, with all its scars and secrets, had become the foundation for a future that was rich with possibility. "I never imagined I'd find my voice again," Sarah murmured softly, her eyes glistening with quiet triumph. "But every note of the hidden melody, every challenge we've overcome, has brought us here to a place where the promise of tomorrow is real and vibrant." Ethan squeezed her hand gently, and Mia's laughter filled the air, sound that symbolized the promise of new beginnings and the enduring power of love. Years later, Sarah's story and art continued to inspire those around her. The community center flourished, offering workshops, art classes, and musical evenings that celebrated the strength of the human spirit. Her memoir, The Hidden Melody, became a cherished guide for anyone who had ever felt lost or silenced by life's hardships. It was a book filled with raw honesty, heartfelt reflections, and the unwavering belief that every ending was merely the start of something new. At an anniversary celebration of the community center, a large mural painted by local artists and inspired by Sarah's journey adorned the center's exterior. The mural, depicting a phoenix rising from the ashes, was a visual testament to the resilience and rebirth that had defined Sarah's life. Standing before the mural, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and countless individuals whose lives had been touched by her story, Sarah reflected on her extraordinary journey. "Our scars," she said during her address, "are not marks of defeat, but a roadmap of our survival. Each note of our hidden melody tells the story of every moment we dared to hope, to dream, and to rise again." The crowd responded with a heartfelt ovation, a collective celebration of every struggle turned into strength. In quiet moments after the celebration, as she sat by her piano in the soft glow of twilight, Sarah continued to play the tune that had once been left unfinished. Now every note was imbued with the wisdom of her experiences and the promise of a future defined by resilience and joy. As the silver moon shone overhead, illuminating the pages of her memoir and the vibrant artworks that now adorned the community center, Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. The hidden melody within her heart would continue to evolve each new day, offering the chance to write another verse of love, hope and the endless possibilities of tomorrow. Divorced woman found her voice in the symphony of life.